The story lays bare an uncomfortable truth about how predatory behavior survives, not because it is unseen, but because it is quietly tolerated. The four college athletes do not rely on brute force alone. Their real advantage is the environment. The crowded bar, loud music, alcohol, and the unspoken social rule that people should mind their own business. In that space, silence becomes their most powerful ally. They understand exactly how to operate within it. By surrounding Hannah, blocking her view, positioning their bodies to shield what they are doing, they turn a public place into a private trap. The assault does not happen in darkness. It happens under lights, surrounded by people, yet completely invisible because no one is paying close attention. Predators like these depend on isolation more than violence. They wait for the moment when Hannah's friends drift away, when she is left alone just long enough to be targeted. They test boundaries gradually, starting with jokes, then proximity, then touch. Each step is designed to confuse and overwhelm, to make the victim doubt her own reactions. By the time Hannah realizes the danger, escape routes are already closed. This is not accidental behavior. It is practiced. Their movements are coordinated, their roles clearly defined. One distracts, one blocks, one touches, one watches the room. They have done this before, and they are confident because it has worked before. Silence plays a dual role. It traps Hannah internally and protects the attackers externally. Hannah freezes, not because she is weak, but because her body responds to threat in a way humans have evolved to respond for survival. Fear tightens her throat, slows her thoughts, and robs her of the ability to scream. At the same time, the surrounding crowd's silence sends a message. Even if unintentional, no one is coming. People laugh, drink, and talk, unaware or unwilling to look closely. The attackers count on this. They know that most people do not want confrontation, do not want to misinterpret a situation, do not want to step into something uncomfortable. That hesitation creates a shield stronger than any wall. The script shows how predators weaponize social assumptions. College athletes are assumed to be harmless, successful, respectable. A farm girl is assumed to be naive, quiet, and easily dismissed. When Hannah says no, her refusal is reframed as overreaction. When she resists, it is labeled drama. This gaslighting further isolates her, making her feel small and powerless even while surrounded by people. Silence here is not just the absence of sound. It is the absence of belief. The attackers assume that if anything were noticed, they would be given the benefit of the doubt. That confidence fuels their escalation. What makes this dynamic especially disturbing is how ordinary it looks from the outside. There is no immediate explosion of violence, no obvious struggle that forces attention. That is intentional. Predators thrive in the gray area between what is clearly acceptable and what is clearly criminal. They rely on discomfort being mistaken for consent and fear being mistaken for shyness. In that gray space, silence becomes a form of permission. Not spoken permission, but practical permission, created by inaction and distraction. The moment Madison enters the bar, the balance begins to shift. Not because she is loud or aggressive, but because she sees what others have chosen not to see. Her awareness breaks the isolation Hannah is trapped in. Simply being noticed changes everything. The predators' confidence falters the instant someone recognizes what is happening and names it for what it is. This reveals the fragile nature of their power. It was never absolute. It existed only as long as no one intervened. The story makes it clear that silence is not neutral. It has consequences. It allows harm to grow unchecked. It teaches predators that their behavior is safe and teaches victims that their suffering is invisible. The crowded bar becomes a symbol of how easily abuse can hide in plain sight when people look away. Noise, laughter, and normalcy become camouflage. By exposing this dynamic, the script forces the audience to confront how often harm is enabled not by malice, but by avoidance. The predators are guilty of the assault, but the environment allows it to progress. Silence gives them time. Isolation gives them control. Together, they form the conditions under which predatory behavior flourishes. The story does not need to explain this directly. It shows it unfolding moment by moment, making the truth impossible to ignore. The story systematically dismantles the idea that what people appear to be on the surface reflects who they truly are underneath. From the moment Hannah enters the bar, perception begins shaping reality in dangerous ways. She is instantly labeled by her clothes, her posture, and her quiet nature. Practical shoes become proof of innocence. A soft voice becomes an invitation. Her background as a farm girl is treated not as a life of responsibility and labor, but as a weakness that can be mocked and exploited. In a matter of minutes, strangers decide who she is and what she deserves, based entirely on assumptions that feel harmless but carry real consequences. At the same time, the four college athletes benefit from the opposite set of assumptions. Leather jackets, confidence, and familiarity with the space grant them an unspoken authority. They are loud, comfortable, and known. They belong. Their athletic status shields them from suspicion and gives them a sense of entitlement. When they cross boundaries, it is framed as flirting. When Hannah resists, it is framed as misunderstanding. The imbalance of perception is immediate and powerful. One side is seen as credible and dominant, the other as unsure and insignificant. The script deepens this contrast when Madison enters. She embodies a contradiction that the environment cannot immediately process. She is strikingly beautiful, dressed in a way that draws attention, and completely unbothered by the gaze she attracts. Everyone assumes they know her role the instant they see her. To the men, she is a prize. To the room, she is decoration. Her appearance triggers desire, not caution. This misjudgment becomes the attacker's greatest mistake, because they mistake visibility for vulnerability. Madison understands this dynamic intimately. Her beauty is not a shield, but neither is it a weakness. It is simply a surface layer that others project onto. The calm precision with which she moves through the bar reveals a deeper truth. Power does not announce itself. It observes. While the athletes preen in posture, Madison assesses. While they speak loudly, she listens. The difference between them is not physical strength alone, but self-awareness. She does not need to dominate the room to control it. The reveal of the Navy SEAL ring shatters every assumption in an instant. The object itself is small, but the meaning behind it is immense. It represents discipline, endurance, and a level of training most people will never experience. In that moment, the contrast becomes undeniable. The men who relied on their image as athletes are exposed as fragile beneath the surface. Their strength was borrowed from reputation, not earned through character. Madison's strength, by contrast, exists whether or not anyone recognizes it. The story highlights how dangerous assumptions can be when they go unchallenged. The athletes assume Hannah will be too scared to resist. They assume the crowd will not interfere. They assume Madison is just another woman they can intimidate. Each assumption emboldens them. Each misjudgment pushes them closer to ruin. Their downfall is not caused by bad luck, but by their refusal to see people as they truly are. Even authority figures are not immune to this theme. When the sheriff arrives, he does not see chaos first. He sees composure. Madison's demeanor carries weight because it is grounded in reality, not performance. Her military bearing speaks louder than her appearance ever could. The truth surfaces not through dramatic speeches, but through evidence, consistency, and calm. Assumptions collapse under the pressure of facts. The aftermath reinforces this message. Once the truth is visible, the athletes' identities unravel rapidly. Scholarships vanish, reputations dissolve, and social approval evaporates. The same image that once protected them becomes irrelevant. Without the illusion, there is nothing left to support them. Hannah, once dismissed as weak, begins to be seen differently. Survival, growth, and resilience redefine her. Madison, once seen only as beautiful, is understood as formidable. The script ultimately exposes how often society mistakes confidence for character and appearance for worth. It shows that danger frequently hides behind familiar faces, while real strength often wears a disguise. By forcing these illusions to collide, the story leaves a lasting impression. What we assume can blind us, and what we overlook can be the most powerful thing in the room. The story reframes power in a way that feels both unsettling and clarifying, stripping it of noise, ego, and spectacle. From the beginning, the four college athletes equate strength with size. numbers, and confidence. They take up space, raise their voices, and use physical presence as intimidation. Their movements are meant to overwhelm, to make resistance feel pointless. This version of power is loud and performative, built to be seen and admired. It feeds on attention and approval, and it collapses the moment those things are withdrawn. Madison represents the opposite. Her strength does not announce itself. She does not raise her voice, posture aggressively, or attempt to dominate the room through intimidation. Her control is internal before it is external. Every movement she makes is deliberate. Every word she speaks is measured. Even her stillness carries intent. This discipline creates an imbalance the men do not understand because it does not follow the rules they live by. They expect fear or submission. What they encounter instead is calm. The difference becomes most apparent in how Madison responds to provocation. When the men crowd her, touch her, and attempt to reassert dominance, she does not react emotionally. There is no panic, no visible anger, no loss of composure. Her nervous system remains regulated, even in a hostile environment. This emotional control is what allows her to see clearly, while others are blinded by adrenaline and ego. In contrast, the men's confidence unravels the instant their assumptions are challenged. Their reactions become erratic, driven by wounded pride rather than strategy. The physical confrontation itself reinforces this theme. Madison does not fight to punish or humiliate. She fights to neutralize. Each movement has a purpose, each strike aimed at ending the threat as efficiently as possible. She uses leverage instead of brute force, timing instead of speed, positioning instead of power. This is not chaos. It is applied knowledge. The men rely on strength and aggression, but those tools fail against someone who understands how bodies move and break under pressure. Her dominance is quiet because it does not need to prove itself. What makes this form of power so unsettling is how little effort it seems to require. Madison is not breathing hard. Her appearance remains composed. The fight ends not when the men are destroyed, but when they are no longer dangerous. This restraint underscores the core truth of the story. Real strength is not about how much damage you can cause, but how much control you can maintain. Madison does not lose herself in the moment. She owns it. The contrast extends beyond physicality into authority and credibility. When law enforcement arrives, Madison's composure continues to speak for her. She does not exaggerate or justify herself. She presents facts, evidence, and identity. The same discipline that guided her actions in the fight carries her through the aftermath. Her power is consistent across situations, not dependent on circumstance. The men, by contrast, crumble. Their anger turns to pleading. Their confidence turns to denial. Without dominance, they have nothing to fall back on. The story also highlights how this kind of power is earned, not inherited. Madison's control comes from years of training, failure, endurance, and self-mastery. It is the result of choosing discipline over impulse, awareness over ego. This is why her presence changes the atmosphere of the bar before a single punch is thrown. People sense the difference even if they cannot name it. True power alters a space without demanding attention. By the end, it becomes clear that calm is not the absence of intensity. It is the channeling of it. Madison's restraint is what makes her dangerous. Her discipline is what makes her unstoppable. The men lose not because they are smaller or weaker, but because they mistake noise for strength and aggression for control. The story leaves a lasting impression that real power does not shout. It does not posture. It waits, watches, and acts only when necessary, with precision and certainty. The moment accountability enters the story, the illusion of entitlement collapses with stunning speed. Until that point, the four college athletes operate under the belief that their actions exist without consequence. Their status, their gender, their social standing, and their familiarity with the environment have taught them that rules are flexible for people like them. They behave as if the world is arranged to protect them, as if discomfort caused to others is insignificant compared to their own desires. This belief does not come from nowhere. It has been reinforced over time by silence, excuses, and a system that too often looks the other way. Inside the bar, entitlement expresses itself through confidence rather than caution. The men do not worry about being seen because they assume being seen will not matter. They frame their behavior as normal, harmless, misunderstood. When challenged, they deflect responsibility, suggesting that Hannah invited attention or that the situation is being exaggerated. This reflexive denial reveals how deeply they believe in their own immunity. Accountability, in their minds, is something that happens to other people. That illusion shatters the instant evidence and authority converge. The presence of security cameras, witnesses, and a calm, credible defender removes the space for interpretation. What was once hidden behind noise and bodies is suddenly visible. The narrative shifts from opinion to fact. Touch becomes assault. Blocking becomes confinement. Resistance becomes self-defense. Accountability does not argue. It exposes. And once exposed, entitlement has nowhere to hide. The consequences that follow are not symbolic. They are concrete and irreversible. Scholarships are revoked. Teams sever ties. Careers end before they can begin. The institutions that once celebrated these men move quickly to distance themselves. This sudden reversal highlights how fragile privilege truly is when stripped of secrecy. The same status that once insulated them becomes irrelevant once their actions are documented and named. Their identities, built on success and admiration, unravel under the weight of truth. The legal system reinforces this collapse. Charges are filed, statements recorded, and narratives tested against evidence. The men are no longer in control of the story. Their attempts to reclaim power through blame or denial fail because accountability operates on proof, not confidence. The courtroom does not respond to bravado. It responds to facts. This transition from social dominance to legal vulnerability underscores the story's central warning. Entitlement thrives in the absence of oversight, but it cannot survive scrutiny. The emotional impact of accountability extends beyond punishment. It redefines the meaning of power. The men are forced to confront consequences they never imagined applying to them. Parents withdraw support. Communities judge. Public opinion shifts. The same crowd that once laughed now condemns. Accountability isolates the offenders in the way they once isolated their victim. This reversal is not about revenge. It is about balance being restored. At the same time, accountability creates space for healing and truth. Hannah's experience is validated, not dismissed. Her fear is recognized as real. The system that failed to protect her in the moment acknowledges its role after the fact. This recognition does not erase the trauma, but it affirms that what happened mattered. Accountability, in this sense, is not only punitive, it is affirming. It tells the victim that her experience is real and worthy of response. The story also suggests that accountability sends ripples outward. It challenges others who may have relied on similar entitlement. It disrupts the quiet confidence of those who assume they can act without consequence. By showing how quickly privilege can evaporate, the narrative reframes accountability as a force stronger than intimidation. It is patient, methodical, and inevitable. In the end, entitlement is revealed as a fragile construct, sustained only by silence and disbelief. Accountability, once engaged, dismantles it completely. The story does not portray consequences as excessive or dramatic, but as proportional and necessary. Actions lead to outcomes. Power is no longer self-declared. It is measured by responsibility. Through this collapse, the script delivers a clear truth. Entitlement may feel permanent, but accountability is always waiting. The story treats survival not as a lesser form of courage, but as its foundation. Hannah's experience challenges the popular narrative that bravery must look loud, defiant, or physically aggressive. When the danger escalates, her body does what many bodies do under extreme threat. It freezes, her voice weakens, her movements slow, and panic narrows her world to the immediate fear in front of her. The script makes it clear that this response is not a failure of character, but a deeply human reaction to terror. Survival instincts do not always manifest as fighting back. Sometimes they manifest as endurance, as holding on long enough for help to arrive. Hannah's freezing is contrasted with the expectations placed on victims, especially women, to resist perfectly. Society often measures courage by visible action, ignoring the reality of fear's physical grip. The story rejects that judgment. Hannah does not choose to freeze, and she does not consent by freezing. Her fear is not weakness. It is evidence of how real the threat is. By allowing her experience to unfold honestly, the script reframes survival itself as an act of strength. Staying alive in a moment designed to strip away control is bravery in its rawest form. The arrival of Madison does not erase Hannah's fear. And that distinction matters. Hannah is saved, but she is not instantly healed. The aftermath shows her shaken, questioning herself, replaying the moment she could not act. This internal struggle is as important as the external rescue. Trauma does not end when danger ends. The story honors this by giving space to Hannah's doubt and vulnerability instead of rushing her into empowerment cliches. Her courage continues after the bar, in the quiet moments where she confronts what happened rather than pretending it did not. Madison's role reinforces this message rather than overshadowing it. Despite her training and strength, she does not shame Hannah for freezing. She names it as normal. She admits that even with years of elite military conditioning, fear can still take control. This admission dismantles the myth that only the untrained or weak freeze under pressure. Fear does not discriminate. And courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep living and moving forward in spite of it. The turning point for Hannah's bravery is not the fight itself, but her willingness to heal and reclaim power afterward. She asks to learn. She chooses to train. She chooses awareness, preparation, and growth. These choices are quiet and unglamorous, but they are transformative. Courage becomes a process rather than a single moment. It unfolds over days, weeks, and years. By becoming a self-defense instructor later in life, Hannah turns survival into purpose, not because she owes the world strength, but because she claims it for herself. The story emphasizes that bravery is not always visible in the moment it matters most. Sometimes it shows up later, in reflection, in recovery, and in refusal to remain defined by harm. Hannah's journey affirms that surviving violence does not make someone broken. It makes them a witness to resilience. Her strength grows not from denying fear, but from understanding it. This perspective also shifts how heroism is defined. Madison's physical intervention is heroic, but it does not diminish Hannah's courage. Their strengths exist on different timelines. Madison acts in the instant. Hannah endures and rebuilds. The story places equal weight on both forms of bravery, showing that protection and survival are not opposing roles, but complementary ones. One stops the harm. The other ensures the harm does not win. By the end, survival is reframed as the first step in a longer act of defiance. Hannah's continued existence, her education, her teaching, and her refusal to disappear into silence become acts of courage that outlast the violence itself. The men who tried to erase her power fail not only because they are punished, but because Hannah lives fully afterward. Her survival denies them the lasting control they sought. The script ultimately delivers a powerful truth. Bravery is not a performance. It does not require perfection or immediate strength. Sometimes it looks like freezing, trembling, crying, and still making it through the night. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is survive long enough to choose who they become next.